everyone. So excited that you've decided to spend your 8 o'clock hour with us. Welcome to Reawaken Your Brilliance. So I was thinking this week about the definition of success and failure, because someone had mentioned that they felt Tim Tebow was a failure because he didn't make it to the Super Bowl with the Broncos. Unfortunately, I'm a Steelers fan, and so they beat us. But I was cheering for him just because, as I've mentioned in other shows, he has had people his whole life say you can't do it, and he succeeded. But so I had a conversation with this person, and I just thought it was really interesting that the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl, was a level of success. And so that made me think about my personal life and why we all want to succeed, and it's great if we win the Super Bowl, it's great if we win a national award. All that's really wonderful, but perhaps we need to take a step back and look at our definition of success, because you know, Tebow led him to a even season or winning season. I don't remember what it was. Led him to the playoffs for the first time. Won the first round of the playoffs. To me, that's a success. So this week, maybe reflect on your definition of success and failure, and maybe you need to ease up a little bit. Think about it to someone that's really ill. To live another day is a success. So I just encourage you to think about that and pat yourself on the back, because I'm sure you've succeeded in many ways. So I'm going to tell you about tonight's guest. Debra May is a certified instructor from the world-renowned Chopra Center of Well-Being in Carlsbad, California, and brings with her over 20 years of meditation and wellness experience. Debra lived in Europe for 8 of those years and used her degree in communications to teach workshops on effective communication. Her business, Creating Wellness Now, has developed programs to work with companies and individuals reducing their stress levels through meditation, nutrition, and exercise. She says, use the mind-body connection for a healthier and more productive life. Why drag your body kicking and screaming? It's much easier to let your mind lead you there so you can enjoy the rest of your life. Welcome, Debra.
Thank you.
We are thrilled to have you tonight. I think meditation is such a great tool, and I think if everyone learned how to meditate, the world would be much better off.
Yes, it would.
So let's start off with the basics for people out there that maybe don't know or think meditation is woo-woo. What exactly is meditation?
Meditation is simply getting in touch with yourself. Meditation is something that probably a lot of people do and they don't even know that they're doing it. It's present moment awareness. So when you're totally present to the time that you're in right now, then you're kind of meditating. So when you're playing with your dog or you're out for a walk, it's a kind of meditation if you're totally present to the moment.
And so why is it important for us to be in the present moment?
Well, our mind likes to take us either to the past or to the future. So usually we're either thinking about something that we did in the past and regretting it or reliving it, or thinking about what's going to come in the future. And ironically enough, the only moment that we can live in is this present moment. So that means that the present moment that's occurring right now, we're missing because we're either ruminating about the past or projecting into the future.
I unfortunately can agree with that statement. I think I spent a lot of my life, again, rehashing the past or worrying about the future, and that's something I've really focused to improve upon. So I think those are great examples. Living in the present moment, and that's so important. Could you tell us a little bit more about traditional meditation for people who want to sit down and talk about that?
For people who want to sit down and talk about that.
Well, a very simple way for people to learn to meditate is just for them to follow their breath. When you breathe in and breathe out, you're in the present moment. So if they sit in a relaxed way, they don't have to have their legs folded up or in any kind of constrained way, but they just sit very relaxed and they breathe in and then they breathe out and they say to themselves, now I'm breathing in, now I'm breathing out. It sounds super simple, and it is. They can close their eyes and be in a relaxed chair and put their feet on the ground and be sitting upright, because if they're laying flat, then they will be communicating to their nervous system that they need to sleep. But instead, what they need to do is just follow their breath and maybe even feel their heartbeat And what happens then is you're totally in the present moment, and you get it clear, and you get rid of those ruminating thoughts. Now, sometimes thoughts will come by, and one of the biggest misnomers for meditation is that you won't have thoughts. But it's impossible for us not to have a thought, because we even think while we're asleep. But the important thing is for us to be focused on our breath and on our body. And then when a thought pops up, you just watch it, just like you're watching a cloud go by. So you just think, oh, there's a thought about work. Oh, there's a thought about my family. But you come back to the breath. And what that does is that makes you in a very relaxed and very awakened state, because we are not our thoughts, but we are the person having the thoughts.
I think that's great, and I really appreciate you giving the example of simply breathing in and out. Once when I was living in Boston, I took a meditation course, and it drove me crazy because the person was like, imagine a grain of sand in between your teeth as you breathe. And I had my legs crossed, and I was younger. I was in my 20s, but I was like, dang, my legs hurt and this piece of rice. And I wasn't able to relax. So I think that that's a wonderful explanation, and that anyone can just right at this moment take a breath in, take a breath out. So when someone is meditating, what is going on in their mind and body? You talked a little bit about the thoughts, but what's going on in the body? You mentioned relaxation. Can you go a little deeper?
Yes. Basically, what happens to us and why we need meditation so much is our body is constantly being triggered by something called fight or flight. So when something stressful happens, which stressful things happen all the time. They don't have to be your car is broken down on the side of the road, or you lose your job, which are super stressful things, but just normal stressful things. You get caught in a traffic jam, or you have too many emails, or you have a bill that you can't pay this month. What happens with that is our prehistoric fight or flight gets activated, and adrenaline and cortisol and all of those things get flooded into our body. And when we meditate, it's the opposite. It's letting go. So just like we power down everything, we power down our computers, we power down our cell phones, it's a way for us to power down ourselves and get back in touch with who we are. Like I said before, we are not our thoughts, but we are the person having the thoughts. So when you have a thought, and then there's a space. So right now, while you're listening to me, you're still having thoughts. And then there's another thought. In that space is you, the person having the thoughts. So that's what you're doing. You're getting in touch with the real you.
I love that. Now, I want to remind everyone, we actually have a question for you, Debra, on chat. If you have a question for Debra about meditation, you can call at 919-518-9773. I know we have listeners all over the world, so if you want to save a dime, I would. You can Skype in at Computers 2K Voice and ask a question. This is a great question from Warrior Spirit. Do I have to be a liberal to meditate? Do any Republicans meditate?
No, you don't have to have any particular kind of persuasion. You don't have to be black or white or Republican or Democrat or, Hindu or Christian. I mean, basically, you're just following your own breath. And that's our God-given breath. That's what we were put on this planet to do. And so basically, you're doing something very, very simple. Your breath is connected with how your body is responding. So if you're very agitated and upset, you have shallow, frequent breaths. And when you're very relaxed, you have long and deep breaths. So you can actually control your mind and body by your breathing.
Now, that actually brought up another question for me, because I can kind of understand where that's coming from. I had, we live in the South. Debra lives here in Raleigh with me, and I suggested a yoga person to do a workshop, and someone said to me, I appreciate that, but it offends some people, and so they felt yoga was against their religious beliefs. and I didn't get any detail on it because I didn't actually talk to someone who felt that. But so as far as you know, meditation isn't against anyone's religion or anything. That, again, I think you've simplified it really well, that it's just really breathing and being in the present moment. But it's, to the best of your knowledge, it's no religious issue.
No, there's no religious issues. Now, there are various types of meditations that can be done by different religions. Different religious persuasions have different types that they like to do. But, I mean, simply being quiet and following your breath, following your own breath, certainly couldn't be offensive to any political persuasion or any particular religion, I would imagine.
So talk to me a little bit about the benefits of meditation. If you could talk about benefits to your body, mind, and spirit, emotions, whatever you'd like to, that would be great.
Well, meditation basically improves everything in our body, because as we meditate, like I said, let me tell you the 3 responses that happen during meditation. 1, you're sitting and you're being still, so you can naturally fall asleep. And sometimes if I wake up in the middle of the night, I use the same form, although then I'm laying flat. So it's not like, sitting up and meditating in a state of restful awakeness. But if you're laying flat and you need to fall asleep, you can use the same thing. Follow your breath as it's going in and out of your body. Listen to your heartbeat, and you will naturally drift off. So one of the things that can happen while you're sitting up and meditating, even in the middle of the day, is you can fall asleep. And that simply means you need more sleep. It means your nervous system has finally gotten one peaceful moment and you've drifted off, and that's fine. Another thing that can happen is you can have a lot of thoughts. And this is probably the most common, and that's why people give up, because they think they're doing something wrong. But really what you're doing is you're releasing all the thoughts that are already there floating around in your head. You're releasing them. So you're just giving them space. So even if you come out of a meditation and all you've done is release a lot of thoughts, you will feel better afterwards. And then the third thing that can happen in meditation is you fall into that space in between the thoughts that I told you about. So you can be breathing and you're saying to yourself, now I'm breathing in, now I'm breathing out, and it's very peaceful. And 1 or 2 minutes into the meditation, you will just be somewhere where you're not thinking about breathing and you're not thinking about anything else, but you're just in this very peaceful, blissful state. But then, of course, the moment that you think, wow, this is really cool, then you're out of it.
Right.
But it's no problem. I mean, there's a lot of very famous people in the past. For example, Thomas Edison, who had 2 ball bearings that he used to have on his desk. And he used to sit there with the ball bearings in his hands, close his eyes, and just be in a peaceful place. And he said that's where all of his ideas came from. So if we create some space in our life, not only do we allow all of those kind of erratic thoughts to leave, or if we fall asleep, we get a little bit of extra needed sleep or a signal from the body that we need more sleep. But we also are open to this vast space where all the ideas come from. A lot of people have ideas in their shower because for the same reason. They're in there, the water is flowing on them, they're totally in the present moment, nobody's bothering them, the phone's not ringing, there's no computer in there, and they'll have great thoughts in the shower. I'm
a bubble bath girl, and that's exactly where they all come from, because I'm relaxed, it's warm, it smells good. Now, Debra, I have a question for one of my big New Year's resolution is to meditate regularly. I learned Transcendental Meditation, which I definitely want to touch on tonight. That was something that I found that worked for me personally. And I remember when I was meditating, a couple things. One, my intuition was just sharpened. I mean, it just really amazingly, when Transcendental Meditation, you are to, at the beginning, meditate twice daily for 20 minutes. And when I did that, and I was intuitive, but I was also relaxed. I felt like I had enough sleep. I remember once I was a nanny and I was meditating, and I came out and they said, oh, your car, they called about your car, and they said, oh, we knocked on your door, and I didn't hear them. I had ended up meditating for 2 hours just because I had gotten to that point where whatever it's called, I could just relax and hang out, and it felt like 5 minutes went away. So I'm a huge fan of that. But if someone wants to start a meditation practice, do you have a suggestion? Does it take a week or two? What are your thoughts on that until they are able to do it regularly? Because you mentioned a lot of the thoughts, I know, especially when people start racing around. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, personally, I am not an A personality, but a triple A personality. So I'm always trying to do 30 things at once, which is not good. And that's actually why I started meditating in the first place. I mean, I literally was getting heart palpitations, and something needed to stop. And my doctor actually recommended that I learn to meditate, and that's how I found Deepak Chopra and started reading his books and went out to the center in California and became a meditation instructor because I loved it so much. But in the beginning, I found it very difficult to sit still, even for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So what I would suggest to people like myself, is, find a comfortable place to sit where you won't be disturbed. Take the phone off the hook and sit there and follow your breath for 5 minutes. If you're afraid that you're going to fall asleep or you're going to lose track of time, you can put a timer on. And just do it for 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes before you go to bed. And then increase it to 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes before you go to bed, until the optimal time is about 15 to 20 minutes in the morning and 15 to 20 minutes at night. But even if you only spend 5 minutes, you're going to get a great benefit because, like I said, you're flipping the switch off. So you're getting to a place of restful awareness. And by creating more space in your mind, in your body, and coming to a peaceful place, what ends up happening is you become more responsive and less reactive. So when something happens, instead of reacting to it, you respond to it because it gives you a little bit of space. So, gradually you work your way up to the 20 minutes. One of the things I used to do, I had a hard time just sitting in my home and meditating because I'd see all the things that I was supposed to be doing. So I would, before I would go pick up my kids in the carpool, I would just go sit out in the car. And for some reason there, I didn't, wasn't distracted. And then, I would just sit there and meditate for 5 or 10 minutes before I left to go pick up the kids. And then I noticed how much more relaxed I was. And some of the health benefits are, it lowers your blood pressure. It helps you get more alert and more focused and more creative. So, totally the things that you were talking about with increasing your intuition and your creativity.
Now, Debra, I want to remind everyone, we do have a question for you on chat. If you do have a question for Debra, call us at 919-518-9773 or Skype in at Computers 2K Voice. We have a great question, which will be a nice tie-in to the event that you're doing with me at the end of the month, Debra. Cheese Goddess writes, I eat too much. Can meditation help me lose weight?
That is a great question. Absolutely. Because when you meditate, what you start to do is you start to get more in touch with the real you. And a lot of times what we do with eating is either we're too stressed out and we use that to balance ourselves. We could be sad. We could be not getting enough sleep. And meditation helps with all of those things. It helps us, come to a balanced state. It helps us be more peaceful, more relaxed, and more rested. And it also gives us that awareness that helps us start to realize, I'm not really hungry. Why am I reaching for this particular thing? So it's, just gives us more awareness.
Now, Debra, I want to go back really quickly to something you mentioned before I asked the question that I think is really apparent. And if you could give us an example, a concrete example, I think that would help. You talk about when you meditate regularly that you become more responsive than reactive. So could you use an example of someone who's been meditating, maybe how they'd react prior to meditating and then a response?
Well, especially if you have very quick response time, you can have a tendency, and if you're not patient, you can have a tendency to be reactive if somebody triggers something in you. So if somebody asks you a question, you think it's a dumb question, or somebody annoys you, you can snap back right away with whatever's on your mind. Whereas when you've been meditating for a while and you create that space, you'll take a breath and really, think about it, and you won't react, but you'll have time to respond. And even if you say, well, I don't really have an answer for that right now, but it just gives you that extra space that you need.
Do you think meditating regularly makes you more compassionate?
I think that meditating helps you in every form of life because, if you think about it, this is what Deepak talks about all the time. Just in the early 1900s, there were no cars, there were no lights. So basically we were sitting around by candlelight. There were no computers, there were no phones. We didn't have TV. So really just 2 lifetimes ago, when it was dark, we would go to bed. And so stores weren't open 24 hours. People worked hard, people worked with their bodies, and people were tired. And now we're always on the line. We see things on TV that upset us that are happening all the way on the other side of the world. And we're always available with cell phones and with computers, and the stores are always open. And so there's a lot more stress. And that's why it's so important to find that off button and to switch off. And I also recommend, people taking a walk and doing a walking meditation where they're walking and taking in everything that they see around them and really trying to stay in the present moment. So when they find themselves drifting off to something that happened in the past or projecting something in the future, that they really get back to it and say no, and they put their attention on their feet, say, oh, I feel my feet on the ground, I feel my breath going in and out of my body, I'm looking at these, beautiful trees, or right now, the leaves are all on the ground, so, we just find other things to put our attention on, and that's, putting us in present moment awareness, and it's also getting us in touch with ourselves.
Now, Debra, to everything I do and every guest that I have on this show, although some people might not believe it, I am a skeptic. I always have a little bit of skepticism, and I think that keeps me on the straight and narrow. So are there benefits if someone's like, okay, this might be a good idea? Are there benefits from meditation, scientific studies that have been done that show, hey, you know what, if you meditate, you get the body mental benefits?
There are so many thousands of studies that have been done and are being done now because we're getting more into preventative medicine. And if you just Google health benefits, scientific health benefits of meditation, you'll so many studies. And there's also right in our area, let me see, it's Duke, the Duke Alternative Medical Center, where they teach meditation. And there's thousands of studies there showing that people become more compassionate, people become more intuitive, people become, their heart rate goes down, their blood pressure goes down, they're more in touch with themselves. Also, when you meditate, you can feel something going on in your body. Because normally we're so busy rushing around, but one of the first things that I do when I sit down to meditate is just check in with my body from my feet all the way up to the top of my head, and just check in and see if there's anything going on. Might be a little bit of tightness here or there, and I'll put some attention on that. And when we're rushing around, we don't feel any of that. We don't take those cues. So that's another reason why it's important to, follow those cues. But that's a very good question, and I would tell anybody to go ahead and explore that. Dr. Oz, who is on, television, and he said meditation is one of the best things you can do for your body. And
Dr. Oz has also said that energy medicine is the next frontier, which I just think's awesome for someone who's that well known and that public to say, hey, it's happening, it's here, we're just going to continue in that direction. So something I was really curious about that you wrote on your site. You wrote about meditation shifting our awareness. Why would we want to shift our awareness? Why would we want this to happen?
Well, we want to really be in touch with our own awareness. So when I say shift your awareness from being outside of yourself to being inside of yourself. And for some of us, like myself in the past, it's so foreign to have what's called self-referral. I mean, even when we introduce ourselves, what do we say? We say our name. We say, what nationality we are. We say what our job is. And those are all positions and possessions, but that's not really who we are. So one of the things that we find out in meditation is we get in touch with that spirit that's inside of us.
I like that. Now, we've got another question from Cheese Goddess for you, and I want to remind everyone I am monitoring the chat, so if you have a question for Debra, ask away. You can call 919-518-9773 or Skype in at Computers 2K Voice. Cheese Goddess would like to know, can meditation have the same effects as antidepressants?
Meditation has been used to help people with depression. And one of the reasons is when people are wound up very, very tight, and when they're projecting, their things from the past or things from the future, projecting into the future can give us a lot of anxiety. And worrying about something that happened in the past can make you depressed because you can't change it anyways. Mm-hmm. So it definitely does help people that have depression.
Oh, that's good to know. I unfortunately was I lost when I was living in Los Angeles, got laid off and became very depressed, and they had a doctor put me on antidepressants, and I lasted about 3 weeks because it changed who I was. It changed my personality. I was too relaxed. I mean, a building could have been on fire, and I'm like, hey, the building's on fire, but it had the opposite effect. So that's, I think, wonderful to know that meditation is something that can help people who are depressed or anxious. It doesn't cost them any money. They can learn it and do that and help correct the problem instead of something that, I always laugh when I see those commercials. Oh, might cause heartburn, might cause your leg to fall off, and all these side effects for these medicines instead of treating what's really wrong. Now, there's another great quote from your site. I know we talked about it a little, but maybe you can elaborate. You said, after all, you're not your thoughts. You're the infinite choice maker who is having the thoughts. So what's the infinite choice maker? Talk to me about that.
Well, and that's another thing that you find out when you're meditating, because you see the thoughts going by. And that's part of shifting the awareness and becoming aware of what you're thinking about. Because you'll be quiet, and so then you'll see the thoughts going by, like, oh, I've got a thought about this particular person or this particular situation, and you start rehearsing, what you said, and then you'll come back to your breath and say, oh, why am I thinking about that? That's the past. And then you might think, oh, when I get done with this, I'm going to do such and such, and then you'll think, oh, wow, that's the future. So you actually start to realize it, which you don't realize before you have that. You don't realize that you're not in the present moment.
Right, exactly. And I had a question about, there are different types of meditation. Do you think you could talk to us briefly about those? For instance, I would believe at the Chopra Center you would have learned Transcendental Meditation. Is that correct?
Well, Deepak Chopra was a student of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who brought Transcendental Meditation over from India. So, and Deepak is a medical doctor. He's an endocrinologist, and his partner David Simon at the Chopra Center is a neurologist. And so what they did was they were both meditators, and they both studied the effects of meditation and how it helped people's health. So one of the things that they did was kind of demystify the whole process from Transcendental Meditation. And what Deepak, his programs are, he has a primordial sound meditation. So you focus on a particular sound, and that's based upon your date of birth, place of birth, and time of birth. And that's how they figure out the primordial sound. But you can also listen to what's called a guided imagery. You can get a CD disc and listen to that, and you can listen to just nature sounds. That also makes us very peaceful. You can listen to ocean waves or birds chirping or a thunderstorm. These are all primordial sounds before language.
Okay, because what I wanted to say was when I learned Transcendental Meditation, I was given a mantra. And so this is interesting because I didn't realize, and I guess I've been mispronouncing it, so it's Chopra.
Deepak Chopra. That's
Chopra,
correct.
Okay. So in primordial meditation, then you're given a sound. So do you give someone, you said it's based on a couple things like your birth date and all that. Do you give them a CD or do they repeat the sound? How does that work?
Well, the way that it works is all the teachers, the instructors, the certified instructors like myself, we send away. If you were to come to me and I would get that information from you, I would email that to the Chopra Center, and then because it's a very ancient tradition, it's done orally in person with the instructor. So they would send me the number on a disc of the sound, and then I would listen to it several times, and then I would give it to you in person. But it's very similar to the mantra that you received in TM. It's a sound that you say. And
I believe what they said, and it's besides the mantra and it sounds with the sound, you can't attach anything to it. It's not like
right.
Dog, so you'd think bark, bark, dog, dog. And so because it's this pre-language, that allows your brain to stop. Now, Debra, we've got another question from Cheese Goddess. Cheese Goddess, what a great name. I love cheese. Is there a certain type of meditation that works for depression? You have any thoughts on that?
Any type of meditation would help with depression. Probably if you are starting off and you want to experiment with different types, you could try the type just in silence. Now, when I first started off, I had a really difficult time being silent and being in silence. So I particularly liked CD discs that had these nature sounds on them. So I have one that has an ocean sound, and I have one that has a thunderstorm sound. So you can get something like that. Or you can also get a guided imagery where you get taken on a little walk and a path, and they basically are distracting your mind from having thoughts by telling you a little story, and you're visualizing yourself walking down this path and sitting in a clearing and all of that. And so that can make you very peaceful as well. So
those are that's excellent. So we have the primordial sound, which you teach. We talked about TM, which there's a mantra. You know, you've talked about just breathing. I'm trying to remember, I don't know if it was Zen meditation when I was told to think about the grain of rice and sit on the little pillow. Do you know a little bit about that? I don't remember because it was just to kind of, I guess, sit quietly. So there's more than one type of meditation that someone could do, obviously, to help.
Yeah, and if you want to try one of the meditations that Deepak Chopra has, you can go to www.chopra.com, and there are many free meditations available there for you, and you can try one out. And Deepak is leading through one of them, and the CEO of the Chopra Center, David Greenspan, gives one, and David Simon has one. So I would suggest you go to Chopra, CHOPRA.com, and check out some of the meditations there and see what you like the best.
And so you can teach meditation. So if someone was maybe struggling with this or wanted some guidance, they would be able to come to you and get their primordial sound, figure all that out, and you would sit with them and teach them how to meditate.
Right, and that the advantage of having a teacher is that you have the feedback. So you have the questions that come up or experiences that happen in meditation. I don't talk about experiences that happen in meditation only because they're so personal, and I don't want to talk about what could happen, what happens with me in meditation, because something else could happen. It took me a really long time to relax, like 6 months, before finally I had like feelings of floating and just being a total peace. And I had one of my students come back, and this was a woman who was a CEO of a company. So I, thought, well, she's probably going to be like me because she's a very active person. She's probably going to come back after a week of practicing meditation and saying, wow, that was really difficult and I can't sit still. And, all I do is have a lot of thoughts. And I would, calm her and say, well, that's usually what happens and just stick with it. And she came back and she had all these great feelings like, oh, wow, that was great. Just like, something similar to what you said, Julie. But, I was just, in this complete state of bliss for almost an hour. And I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty cool.
That's excellent. So I should ask this because you mentioned this. So it is important if you do start a meditation practice, you should do it daily, correct?
That's correct. Because the more you do it, it's just like exercise or anything else that we do. The more consistency that you use, the better it is, the better results you get. And it's cumulative, so it builds on each other.
Now, was there a particular reason why you chose to learn primordial meditation? Did you try a couple of different meditations and this was just worked with you, or was there something about it that drew you to it?
Well, I went and heard Deepak speak in Durham, and that was in 1996. And he talked about all the medical benefits of meditation. And like I said, I was having, medical problems back then. And I thought, okay, well, this is something I want to try. And I just, tried his particular type, which is the primordial sound meditation, with an instructor. There were about 10 people in the class. And, there was a little part of lecture. And then there was a part where we had one-on-one with the instructor. And then we came back together, when we all meditated together. There's actually some interesting studies about people who meditate together. They've had this Marshall Rosenberg has studied the effects of a large group of people meditating together. Like, for example, they had a group of 600 people who meditated together in a big ballroom in Washington, D.C. And not only did the people feel more at peace, but everybody in the hotel felt more at peace. And not only that, the crime rate in Washington, D.C. went down that week that those people were all meditating. So it shows the incredible effects that meditation has, not only for us individually, but for our entire planet.
Do you offer group meditations if people are interested in that and want to do that?
I do. People can get in touch with me, and I give a group meditation at my home in my sunroom, and in several other places.
Oh, that's good to know. I had heard about that study before about the crime rate going down in D.C., and I don't know if you know enough about this to comment on it, but it's been my understanding that more schools, especially in places like the inner city where the kids are more likely to face more challenging environments, that they've started to introduce meditation to children.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I have a friend whose son is teaching meditation to children out in San Francisco. He does not only meditation, but he does this martial arts, and they do that as well. And they've found that the children become much more relaxed, and that they become much more focused and attentive, and it helps them in many different ways.
Yeah, that's what I've read as well, too, that it's just supposed to be very beneficial. And I had a friend who taught meditation to children, and she told me about a child that some of the kids in her class couldn't even have their back to the door. That made them so stressed out because they were growing up in an environment where a gunshot could come through at any moment. But by learning to meditate, they were able to finally relax, trust a little more, and it's something that completely changed their lives. Now, do you know anything? I've heard also that meditation can help with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes, meditation has been used for that as well. Now, I wouldn't use it in place of therapy because I know people with post-traumatic stress disorder also, need to have a certain amount of therapy. There's also another technique called the emotional freedom technique, which is a tapping technique that you can look up if you have those emotional issues, and that actually releases some of the trauma that's in the body.
And we actually had in August, we had an EFT expert on. So if you can scroll down on Reawaken Your Brilliance and check out Sue Hannibal's hour on EFT. Now I want to remind everyone, if you have a question for Debra, you can chat it or call 919-518-9773 or Skype in at computers 2K voice. So I want you to talk a little bit about, because you're the only person I know who is a certified Chopra instructor. So what's the process for that? What did you have to do to have that certification?
Well, basically the Chopra Center has a lot of really great programs, and if you go to www.chopra.com, you can see them. So they have about 10 different programs that you have to take. That back when I was doing this in the mid-90s, Deepak Chopra was teaching all of these classes himself, and now instructors are teaching them. But basically Deepak and David Simon, who are both medical doctors, designed these programs. And one is called Healing the Heart, and one is all about meditation and following the breath. And basically it was about a 2-year program. And some of it includes medical studies that are done. I mean, there's some amazing things, even just with little teeny mice that they showed that talk about awareness, and how when our awareness, we had talked about shifting your awareness. And sometimes when we get into a situation that we think is hopeless, we've lost our job or something, and I know a lot of people are going through times like that we don't see the end. We don't see that something is going to get better. So one of the studies that they did with little mice is they put them in a bowl of water, and they would tread water in like about 20 minutes, and then they would go under and drown. So, of course, they'd rescue them after they went down under. But if they took those same little mice and took them to the rim of the bowl so that they saw they were inside of a bowl and that there was something outside of it, then they didn't lose hope. And they could tread water for hours. They would just take them every 15, 20 minutes and let them rest, and then they'd put them back in there again. And I just thought that was so interesting. And that's just a little mouse with just a little mouse awareness. So you can imagine with our awareness, when we connect to our source, outside of outside of ourselves, and just connect to the whole universal spirit, to the God of our understanding, and we give that time, what solutions we can come up with in our life by giving ourselves that time.
We have a question for you, Debra, from It's a Wonderful Life. What's the difference between prayer and meditation, or are they basically the same thing?
That's a very good question. And somebody asked that to Mother Teresa, who Mother Teresa meditated for 4 hours a day. And Mother Teresa said, prayer is when we talk to God, and meditation is when we listen for the answer.
Oh, I like that. That's excellent. Can you say that one more time? I thought that was really groovy.
This is a quote from Mother Teresa, who meditated herself, and she said, prayer is when we talk to God, and meditation is when we listen.
I like that. I think that's an excellent answer. Now, I want to remind everyone, you've chatted in a question. I'm happy to ask Debra. You can call in at 919-518-9773 or Skype in at computers 2K voice. Now, Debra, you talked on this a little bit, but if there's someone out there who's new and wants to check out meditation, I know you'd mentioned the Chopra Center that has some downloads. Can you give someone advice when they're looking for a particular type of meditation or a meditation teacher?
I would say that you use your own intuition. Bring up questions that concern you, and you just use your intuition to help guide you, because our heart knowledge is much more powerful than our brain knowledge. Our heart electromagnetic field is 10 times stronger than our brain electromagnetic field. So even though we are dependent upon our minds, it's really our hearts that give us the truth of the situation.
Now, also, you'd mentioned this briefly at the beginning, but one of the things that I like to have, that I found with a lot of my guests, I mean, you're an expert in meditation and creating health and really living in the present moment, but someone out there, like you mentioned earlier, might not be able to see out of the water bowl. What was going on? You mentioned some medical issues. I don't want you to have to reveal everything or be too uncomfortable, get too personal, but what was it that motivated you? What was that aha moment when you were able to figure out, you know what, meditation is working for me and I want to take this even a step further and get certified and teach this?
I think that's an excellent question, and I don't mind answering it. I was just so wound up with what was going on in my life. I was a young mom with young kids and extremely busy, and I had a job, so I was working and taking care of my family. And I had insomnia. I never could rest. I was getting heart palpitations, and I, like you, tried medicine for like a week, and it made me not able to operate. So I thought, well, this is not a solution. And I started looking for other solutions, and somebody told me about meditation, and that Deepak Chopra was coming to Durham, and I went and saw him, luckily, and he talked about meditation a lot. And basically, the aha moment was after I started meditating, even though I didn't really feel like anything was going on, I felt really like I was wasting my time in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But people all around me were saying to me, wow, you're so much more, like my boss would say, wow, you're so much more relaxed, even though I didn't feel it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that Deepak tells us, is not to judge our meditation. If we fall asleep, it's okay. If we have lots of thoughts, it's okay. If we fall into the gap and experience bliss, that's okay. But judge how we feel outside of the meditation.
Excellent. So you learned how to meditate, and it was obviously has changed your life. What led you to have such passion to teach others to create wellness and to meditate?
Well, actually, it's something that you mentioned earlier, Julie, and that's the compassion. When you see other people all tensed up and, reacting in certain ways, then you realize that they're at that place where, everybody's doing the best that they can at their level of awareness. If they knew how to do it better, then they would do it better. So it's just part of that, part of giving back, and part of helping people do something that I find very pleasurable and basically, changed my life.
Can you talk about maybe any students you've had, and you don't have to say names, how meditation has impacted them and changed their life? You mentioned a busy CEO that you worked with. Can you maybe think of people who were just like, wow, it just transformed their lives, that even you were like, I know it's good, but that's just amazing?
Well, I had a vice president of a company come to me a couple months ago, and he's in his early 60s. And he has all these, young 20-year-olds right out of college that's working for him. Now, he is a morning person, and he jogs. He's in great shape, and he jogs all the time. And he said, I'm like awake at 5 a.m. and fresh and alert. But in the afternoon, when these kids wake up and they're coming to me with all these great ideas, that's when I'm, getting a sinking spell, and I just want to take a nap, and I can't even pay attention. So I taught him to meditate. And then he started, instead of going out to lunch, he started bringing his lunch and eating a small lunch and meditating for half an hour. He had a lunch hour, so he would eat his lunch for half an hour and meditate for half an hour. And he said that completely re-enlivened him so that he was able to attend to all these young minds and great ideas in the afternoon.
Excellent. Now we have another question for you, Debra, from Warrior Spirit on chat. I saw Chopra on Letterman, and he stated he meditates for 2 hours per day. What kind of meditation does he do for 2 hours, and does he figure out his problems or what? 2 hours?
I know it does sound like a long time, and believe me, when I'm rushing around and I haven't meditated for a day or two, which is pretty rare now, but it does happen, I think to myself, wow, Deepak Chopra is a best-selling author of 28 books. He travels all over the world. He has been recognized as one of the most influential people of the 20th century, and he meditates for 2 hours a day. So certainly Debra May can find at least 20 minutes to meditate. Deepak does the same meditation, the primordial sound meditation with a mantra. And, he says that that's where all of his wisdom and inspiration comes from.
So he definitely makes time for it because obviously that sustains him. And I think, again, I need to get back to my New Year's resolution, but when you're meditating on a regular basis, you see the difference in your life. Kind of once you get over that hump that you talked about when you first started, you couldn't sit still. And once you get over that, I think it's hard to live without it. But then life gets too busy sometimes, and so I can understand. But I think, again, when you remember and see those benefits, that encourages you to do that more. But that's interesting. I didn't know that he meditated 2 hours a day. So I'm going to take your mantra. If Deepak can do it for 2 hours, I can do it for 20 minutes.
Deepak was in Tokyo, and literally he was meditating, and evidently there was an earthquake. And he didn't know it because he was in meditation, and he came out of meditation and he's walking around in his hotel. There's nobody there. And he was thinking, what happened?
Wow, because he must have been in that state where he was just kind of in the zone and in bliss and wasn't even aware of that. Now, I want to remind everyone, you still have a little bit of time left. You can ask Debra a question. We've learned a lot tonight. You can call in at 919-518-9773 or Skype Computers 2K Voice or chat a question. Now, Debra, excuse me, there are two questions that are very important to me that I ask everyone who comes on the show. And you kind of touched on this earlier. I love the mice experiment. I didn't know about that. But, a lot of people out there are struggling. They could be going through a divorce. They could have lost their jobs. And I've been in that situation myself where, you can't see outside of the bowl. So what advice would you give to someone who's listening who might be struggling right now?
Well, I know I went through a big life crisis myself about 2 years ago, and thank God I had the meditation. I used to get up in the middle of the night. I didn't know how I was going to see myself through with this particular situation, and I would prop myself up in bed with pillows behind me and just literally meditate for hours because I couldn't sleep. So meditation, actually, they say that 20 minutes of meditation is like 2 hours of sleeping, because what we're doing is we're using this vast computer of a brain that we have and all the faculties that we have to fly an airplane, to have a baby, to, run a computer, to everything that we do. And instead of putting all the power outside of ourselves, instead we're taking that same power that we do all these miraculous things with, we're closing our eyes and we're putting that power inside of ourselves. So I would say you harness that power, that's your God-given right, and you just get very quiet with yourself, and you'll find the miracles that you need by doing this.
I really, that's wonderful. And the other question that I always have to ask is, because I'm a get off the couch girl, I love this show, but what I want to do is create a revolution of people who are living authentic lives. They're happy. If they're a janitor, they're the best janitor they can be. So what one step can someone take right after the show or first thing tomorrow morning to reawaken their brilliance?
Well, I think that they can spend, just ask themselves a question. Are you valuable and worthy enough to spend 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes in silence discovering yourself? Because I think that when you do spend that time in silence and discover yourself, you're going to fall in love with yourself, because you are the only you out there. No one else can be you. You're unique. You're beautiful. You're here for a reason. And I think that when you get into the silence, you'll find out why you're here. Things will become very clear to you. And meditation, people think that meditation is very passive, but actually is very active, because you're awake and you're just taking all that energy, focusing it on this present moment and creating space for miracles to happen, for answers to come to you. And if you want to do a meditation that is more directed towards something, you can ask a question. And sometimes I do this before I do my meditation. Before I get silent, I close my eyes. I get in a quiet spot, and then I put the question inside of a balloon, and then I release it, and then I do my meditation. And sometimes I get the answer in the meditation. Sometimes I get it a day later. Sometimes I get it a week later. But I always get an answer.
I'll see. There you go. And that doesn't cost anything. Now, Debra, I just want to talk a little bit. I'm really excited. Debra is part of the inaugural panel that we have coming up at the end of the month on January 31st, Reawaken Your Healthy Lifestyle, Weight Loss. And Debra's part of that panel that's going to talk about how to lose weight from a very healthy perspective, looking at your body, mind, spirit. I'm not going to tell you what she's talking about. It's different tonight, but you're going to learn lots of good things, like the energy sometimes that causes you to overeat, your Ayurvedic body-mind type, so an acupuncture point to reduce hunger. So we'd love to have you come to that. You can find out more about that at reawakenyourbrilliance.com. It's called the Thrive Series, and everyone who attends gets a free acupuncture and chiropractor session. So the committee and Debra's raffling off a class. You get to choose either if you want to do meditation or create health now, and Tanya's going to have a healthy eating book. So this panel wants you to be healthy, and so they're doing all these wonderful things. So again, check out reawakenyourbrilliance.com. And Debra, hopefully you're excited about that, because we are so looking forward to having you on that.
I'm very excited. I'm excited to hear from the other panelists that you have as well.
Now, Debra, if people would like to find out, well, first of all, besides the panel that we're doing on January 31st, do you have any upcoming events or classes that you'd like to let people know about?
Well, I teach meditation on a regular basis. I'll be having new classes starting in February. If you go to www.creatingwellnessnow.com. I teach a class called Creating Health, so I almost said Creating Health, but creatingwellnessnow.com. You'll see a list of the classes that I teach, and you can send me an email. There's a contact form on the site, and just let me know what you're interested in.
Now, Debra, can you do, because we're Skyping, and I know you're a Skype pro, so you'd be able to help anyone from anywhere, wouldn't you? Couldn't you do something via Skype?
Yes.
Excellent. Now, we have actually one last question I'm going to call you Formai. Do you ever meditate with angels or healing masters or beings of any kind?
I do not do that, but I mean, I have felt a presence before, which I have a friend who does meditate with angels and does see angels. And, she says that, that those beings are around us all the time. So I guess there's other people that you could contact to do that.
Yeah, I believe that. I definitely feel that angels are definitely around us. Well, I want to thank you, Debra, for joining us tonight. We appreciate everything that you're able to share with us on meditation, and we'll see everyone back here next week. Bye now.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
You are tuned to Reawaken Your Brilliance on the Nissan Communications Network. Listen to some of our other programs like Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Sundays 9 a.m. to noon. Attitude for Business with Mike Sink, Mondays 3 to 3:30 p.m. Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Mondays 8 to 9 p.m. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch the program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com.